Hi guys, welcome back. EryxUK here with my latest gaming update for the past month. It's been a month of ups and downs here and there, both real life and in the gaming side of things. My mum and dad have not been particularly well. That's kind of impacted a few things and put me in a bit of a grumpy mood, I think, for a lot of it. Starting with the 40k, it's been a bit of a rough couple of weeks or so because I've started prepping ideas for the next 40k league, which will be probably February of next year, and there has been some discussion about Forgeworld. For those of you who don't know, Forgeworld is basically a subsidiary company to Games Workshop that produces resin kits for some of the expanded universal vehicles and what have you. So you get, it's where super heavy tanks originally came from, and where you can get Titans and other sort of like Imperial Guard vehicles or variants of Space Marine things which are not in the codexes. They do some stuff for aliens, for the some Eldar, Orc, Tyranids and so forth. And they do these in a series of books called Imperial Armour. And the problem is that when the books were originally done, the first like 3 or 4 of them, I mean there's, I don't know now, what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's about 10 or 11 volumes now, almost, without actually sitting down and counting properly. The first, say, 4 were quite reasonably balanced. These were designed for 3rd edition and 4th initially, and over time you added them, but from that particular point they have become somewhat unbalanced. The points costs aren't equivalent to those that are in the codices. The models are nice, don't get me wrong. Some of them are a little underpowered, some of them are majorly overpowered. But it's not just a case of that. There are people that just don't want to play against them. The Games Workshop don't point to these things, Forgeworld does, and so they're not in keeping with the codices, and sometimes some armies, such as Grey Knights, don't actually get anything. Or they do, but it's something pointless, like a Grey Knight Thunderhawk, which is far too expensive to buy, you know. And the problem is, it started a bit of an argument because the most recent of them, of the books, had a new army list in it. It had the rules for Eldar Corsairs, which are basically piratical Eldars. It's not overly different from the Craft World, the standard Codex Eldar, but there's a few elements which are a bit wiggy. Well, we had 3 players who were interested in it, and they were all like, well, can we use this, because otherwise I'm not going to spend the money, because if I spend the money and I can't play, I'm going to be really annoyed, which is fair enough. And I looked over it and I played a couple of games of it, and I said, you know, it's powerful, but it's not anything more than any of the others, so fair enough, you brought it to me in advance, sorted. And there have been older lists, but they're either not very good or they're just outdated and haven't been brought forward into the current, now, well, then 5th, now 6th edition rules, and with the updates to certain codexes that they were based on. Anyway, so I ended up having a bit of a barney because a couple of players really want to use Forgeworld and they don't think there being a problem. Games Workshop say you can use it as standard, which is bump. They don't say that. All that's happened is that they've removed the you have to ask your opponent's permission from the books. It's a case of the club basically, half of them don't want Forgeworld to be used, the other half don't mind or do. And the club's never been a democracy. The first thing we set it out as is that it's a dictatorship in a velvet glove. I'm El Presidente, I decide. The only reason it's like that is because if you start taking everybody's point of view and everything like that and you put it up to a vote, you never get anywhere. I've heard bad things about clubs that do that, and some of the couple of the original members who helped set things up but are no longer with us also have been part of groups that had the same problem. And so I got some grief for saying these guys should play this particular list, but nothing else. And I've basically come to the conclusion that the Forgeworld stuff can be used in friendly games. But anyway, it caused a bit of a hoo-ha, and it's really kind of put my nose out of joint. And at the moment I've decided we'll split the league. If we do it in the way I'm thinking, we'll do a league, we'll do 2 leagues, sorry. One will be Codex only, one will be Forgeworld, or people that don't mind playing against Forgeworld. But we shall see. I haven't finally decided, but anyway, other than on a more lighter note, in about a month or so, I believe the Fantasy League kicks off. Oddly enough, though, because of 6th edition 40k's release, hardly anyone seems to be playing fantasy games, which is a bit unusual because you really thought people would have wanted to get some practice in. But so yeah, that's kind of just where we are on the 40k on the Warhammer basis. It's irked me somewhat, and I've got to decide exactly what to do and how to balance it, but we'll see. Roleplay wise, my Sunday night games are going quite well. Unfortunately, due to the real life issues, my mum and dad not being very well and being busy in other areas, I've had to do what I didn't really want to do, which is basically take a module or two and tweak them as I play, as I run. It's worked out alright, but I would have much rather preferred to have sat down and written something. Which brings me up, my next game is in a week's time, and I need to come up with something. I'm very tempted to do a murder mystery type of thing, to get away from having dungeons or anything like that. The problem is, for 25 years I have run Call of Cthulhu, which is an investigative game. It's murders and clues and plots and everything else. And I've run Vampire in both incarnations on and off for about 15 years. So I should be used to running that sort of thing, but when you get a fancy game like Dungeons & Dragons / Pathfinder, I find that it becomes so much harder to do. You've got to balance out the fact that characters and NPCs have got spells or such available to them, and exactly how do you handle this sort of thing in a fantasy environment. And I'm having real trouble trying to get it to sink into my head. Might be a topic for another video to do, actually. But otherwise, yep, that game's going quite well. The other game that I'm involved in on a Sunday, because if you watch my videos, we alternate Sundays, my game, my mate Jay's game. It has been a little bit awkward because we have had, again, if you follow my videos, you'll know that the way he's done it is that we each have 3 characters, and those characters then split up into 3 groups, and off they go onto separate quests. Which we kind of grumbled about a little bit because we didn't think that was how it was originally going to play, and it does mean that we end up often with one group which is severely underpowered, or there's loads of fighters, or it's a party of rogues or something wiggy like that. Exaggerated, but yeah. Anyway, the main plot that we've been following is one about I'm loath to say a rebellion. It's more like a... Basically, there's a nation to the south which is really, really poor. The powers that be there basically sell all its resources and its mineral and whatever else wealth to 2 other empires that border it. The one that we're part of, Dinan, and one known as the Empire of Rill. And it basically means that there's a very select few that have a vast amount of money, mainly merchants, and nobody else gets anything. And a kind of an uprising movement of sorts, perhaps, has arisen. And they're basically trying to sabotage wagons and all this sort of stuff. And in order to get us in, and this really irked us, we basically got charges set up against us. We were arrested, our gear stripped from us, and we've basically been branded as prisoners, and we're being shipped to a prison. We get broken out halfway and told, right, we're sorry to do it this way, but there's only way to make it realistic. We're going to send you down such and such a route, and you'll get found by these people, and hopefully they'll recruit you, try and get into them, and we'll find out what they're doing, try and get them to attack such and such a location, and blah. it's really irritating because we really could have done. The fighters in that particular group have got no equipment. My spellcaster, they managed to get me my arcane focus, but otherwise we got no gear, no money, no nothing. And for some strange reason, this cell that we're with of this rebellion also has no resources because everything's been taken by these merchants or what have you who are selling everything off. And it's like, well, how can you have a rebellion that's going to strike and attack places all that if none of your people are none of your cells are equipped to do it? There's about 4 or 5 people in this particular cell that we're part of, and none of them have armour or weapons. So how are they supposed to attack caravans and so forth? And as we've looked further into it, it makes no sense. Now, I don't know if this is part of his plot, but it's got to the point where myself and the other players in that particular group got so frustrated that I think last night when we sat down, he decided to pick one of the other groups and come back to the other one. Hopefully, so he can write stuff out or work something out with it. But that particular plot line was really beginning to narc us, to be honest. It made no sense, and without our equipment, we were getting really snotty because we couldn't do anything. There was absolutely nothing we could do. Anyway, the session last night was much better. He's introduced. Basically, there's one of the nations to the north of the empire we're in. It's basically like a Northman sort of thing, and they've got an army that is attacking our borders. And we have found out that a wizard who got exiled has found something which might be useful, and he'll hand it over if he's reinstated, sort of thing. And it turns out to be he's introducing something along the lines of Warforged from the Eberron setting, and we've been sent in to recover one of these devices which can create a Warforged. As it so happens, we found this particular thing. One of our party members was actually killed. Unfortunately, 2 critical hits in a row, totaling something like 32 total damage when he had 12 hit points left, was enough to spud him. And the GM has allowed him to come back as the first Warforged we were able to make, which was quite cool. We haven't had... the Dark Heresy we've had 1 game of since I last spoke, and that's actually got a lot better. We managed to solve the particular mission we were on, or rather we haven't solved it. If you remember, on that one we were on board a ship that was coming out of the warp and for some reason was then cycling, it was repeating itself. Well, we've managed to sort that out. We found out that something snuck on board at the instant the ship crossed out from the Immaterium into the real world universe, and it's somewhere in the lower decks, and everything seems to be pointing to being some kind of demonic entity of Zinch. And where we finished the last session of that one, we'd tooled up our gear and we were going down into the bilges of the ship to hunt it. The Friday night game that Darren was running has put on hold for the moment. He's basically up to where we were, where he was already written to, because one of the other players would like to run a game, and he's running Rise of the Runelords. So what they're going to do is they're basically going to do chapters and then alternate the group, which is kind of a nice way of doing it. It's slightly frustrating because I'd have liked to stick with the game we were doing, but as we all know, there isn't enough time in the day to actually run everything. So it's a convenient way of doing it for them, I suppose. It gives them a chance to read the next bit or write the next bit. On the alternate week, I have actually managed to get the Call of Cthulhu game up again. I don't know how long for. Pardon me, this is my upstairs neighbour who's playing his drum kit. I hope you can't, that's not being a nuisance. Basically we had the option of playing a scenario from it, so I took the next one along. We had one player from the original group playing his character Detective Brady, and 3 other characters who joined in, and they've almost finished this one. We've played this Friday and they should wrap it up. After that I don't know what's going to happen, because I know that the player of Detective Brady doesn't really want to add another game to his list. to his weeks, and I can understand that. But I know all the other guys would be happy to continue playing. I don't want to play without one of the original characters. It just wouldn't. To me, it wouldn't be fair on them or him, and it would. Well, I don't have a problem with kind of restarting things here because they had an introduction to the character that organised the original group together. I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, so we're just going to have to see what's going to happen on that front. But other than that, it's been quiet. That's just what we've been up to. Not a lot else has happened. I'm hoping that the next month in the Alps of Fantasy League things will pick up a bit better for the Warhammer Club, and the role play seems to be going quite well. So that's what happened over the last 4 weeks. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care and good gaming.